Welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Raymond with the Program Committee at Penn's Village. And as always, we're delighted to have you here and to have Rochelle here to read her original works. So Rochelle, if you will now take it away and introduce yourself and what you're going to read and tell us, about your plays. Apparently, I did not know about those, but it sounds like you have a lot to talk about. So
Well,
welcome.
Thank you, Mark, for your introduction, and thank you, members of Penn's Village and my very good friends from way far away for participating and hearing me. And it's wonderful because last night my lamp went out, so I'm very glad that it's bright afternoon and I'll be able to see and read. The very first poem that I'm going to read is deals with the phenomenon of a wave on the ocean that freezes. This is a creative act that nature spontaneously produces according to correct temperature dynamics. And also the art of the glass blower, a human being who, with their brilliance and imagination, creates out of fire wonderful shapes and forms. I think these two images can intersect, to use a current word, intersect. Never having seen a wave. Never having seen a wave frozen in midair, the glass blower. Manifold images in her brain. The rays of the sun. Amorphous the forms, boiling, forming.
No, that's for me, just that, nothing else.
Oh, I thought I heard a voice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Donna's going to mute everybody. I think we just.
Yeah, I hate those people that ramble on.
I had everyone muted. Please don't unmute.
Oh, thank you, Donna.
Okay, am I heard by everyone?
Yes.
Now they can.
Now they can.
Thank you.
Manifold images in her brain, the rays of the sun. Amorphous the forms, boiling, forming a floating tooth-leaved plant. Floating a canvas, a black hole, a crucible, a bubble glowing. 1/1,000,000th of a second an episode. A ferocious scattering. White ovals, glassy crystals, orbiting. Never having seen a wave frozen in midair, the glass blower. Turning, spinning, blowing hailstones, shaping winds, oceans, storms, storms eddying. Layers of ice cracking, piling, lifting. Molten glass swelling, lifting, arching, never having seen a wave, frozen in midair, the glass blower dipping into the furnace, around and around, rolling and shaping, around and around, a gob of molten glass, melting shards, spiraling, flaring, glittering hot glass, amorphous, dazzling, light frozen in the glass blower's brain, hot glass spiraling around and around. Amorphous the glass, never having seen a wave frozen in midair, cooling, scattering, flowing, suspended, molten the ice, the wind circling a billion suns, the breath of the glass blower the brain of the glass blower. Moisture and nutrients flowing. The glass blower's skull. The skull the color of snow. Ferocious the heat, pouring, melting, melting and freezing the seas, spiraling arms. Out of the crucible, the glass blower, gathering, gathering, never having seen a wave frozen in midair. Rolling, lifting, arching, the layers of glass surging, surging. That is the first poem. The second poem that I would like to read is a poem that concerns two mammals, two species. One, the elephant, and the second, us, humans. This poem is part of a new collection called the Aardvark Venus. And the publisher is here, and it's dedicated. The publisher is here, and that's Susan Smith-Nash. And a very good friend, Margaret Harrington, who I dedicated this book to, as well as my dear husband, who was a member of Penn's Village, George, who died a little over a year ago. Okay. This poem about two mammals, I like to reinforce that. Two mammals, humans and elephant, elephant and human. The poem is titled, Devour Not the Elephant. Poaching scene, crime scene, carcasses of dead rhinos and savanna elephants. Precious the ivory tufts and horns cut off, severed. Two from a bull, raw and bleeding holes gouged into Jumbo's face. Swollen, infected the wounds. Every day bears the data of body, feces, hair and nails, yellowish white bones pushed to the surface. In the green of leaves, in the green of leaves, earth, air, fire, water. What is property? What is property? Property is the body, ears, trunk, feet. The face half severed, precious the ivory tufts and horns. Property is the body, mutilated, burned, ears, trunk, feet. Ears like human fingerprints. None are the same. Ears like human fingerprints, none are the same. Flapping their ears, blood circulates in the head. Ears the shape of Africa. Two long pointed teeth stick out of the mouth. The trunk is like a human arm, or the fingers of a hand picking berries. The fingers of a hand picking berries. Elephant corpses found drifting in a creek. Yellowish white bones pushed to the surface. In the green of leaves, earth, air, fire, water. What is property? Property is the body, a human arm or hand. My mother was sold for me when I could but crawl. Among the stalls, piles of ivory trinkets, bangles, and beads, rows of ivory carvings of maidens, monks, and birds, carcasses of dead rhinos and savanna elephants, carcasses stripped of their skin, burned, mutilated, saleable parts hacked off, ears, trunk, feet, the horns and tusks ground up. My body, the bread, my blood, the wine. Disturbingly informative, an elephant savaged by poachers, poison in the rivers, poison in the arrowheads, following the dying animal around, following the dying animal around. Every day bears the data of body, body of data. Property is the body, mutilated, burned, carnal, spiritual. In the green of leaves, earth, air, fire, water. There is a note that I would like to read. The elephant is a non-predatory mammal, a sensate being. This poem intersects body and spirit. Elephant desire, with a function of marketing, production, distribution, and exchange of elephant and rhino body parts by human predators. Before I read the fourth poem, or the third, I would like to read a poem about Vincent van Gogh that was written years ago, probably in the 80s. Van Gogh was an altruist, a great painter, and also schizophrenic, and a genius. I don't know if the poem is in this book. I think it is. This is another collection. Okay. Unless I come across, well, I can't find it. It's in this book. So I will read a poem that I wrote about Toulouse-Lautrec, another artist who was a genius and quite sensitive and got carried away with wanting certain women that were often nasty, and also fertilized his proud, patriarchal, masculine self. Thank you, Susan. Susan is showing the cover of my book, a new book. All right, Toulouse-Lautrec liked to watch cabaret dancers. And he had fallen in love with a woman named Jane Avril, who was a cabaret dancer. And she, of course, was formed in her feminist, feminist or feminist consciousness. And he, of course, was an aristocrat and a dwarf because of a terrible accident, and a wonderful, innovative painter. And he loved to watch cabaret dances. While manic activity took revenge, Toulouse twisted his body for a superior view of cinnamon-freckled dancers' legs, while Jane's tiny mouth tasted wrath. Liquid adherent covering spread on canvas. He's painting. While pink and black pigment fornicated, Toulouse etched the cruelest slanting Celtic eyes of Jane. While the flakes of a pulverized substance sprinkled his orthopedic shoes, wrath burnt the aorta of Jane. While rapture flowed out in the muted tangerine wash, his upward gazing yearning, Toulouse only saw himself. While he deformed her nostrils, twisting one orifice higher than a gargoyle's snout, scratching the legs of spiders around Jane Havre's lips, a percentage mark in a diseased skull. Toulouse only heard himself, only smelled himself, only touched himself, only ate himself. And that's what Jane felt. My poem, the next poem that I'm going to read was like taking the bull by the horns. Any poem that I write that I feel is worth my humanity is like taking the bull by the horns. I like that cliche. It's a good, truthful cliche about engaging. This poem is called Our Ruinscape. It's essentially why we're all on Zoom, sheltering, as they say, sheltering. Our ruinscape. On the cover of a science magazine, a rare image, disturbingly informative. You stare down, pursing your lips, your neck to the side, plagued by doubt. A hologram of the skeleton of a horse. I must not jump the gun. The rapt reader stands in the space of an enigma, the hidden contours of raw data. Under a dead blue glow, a laboratory technician observes the configuration of microbes, rapidly zigzagging. Zigzagging microbes in a petri dish, colonizing, dispersing, precise, methodical, biological compulsion. Oh, Maggie, you wrecked my bed and kicked me in the head. Oh, Maggie, you wrecked my bed and kicked me in the head. The love of logic, the logic of love. I must not jump the gun. Zigzags of black lines, circles, triangles, rectangles, subatomic particles floating on a computer screen. Molecular, the art of nature. Amorphous, the forms of nature. Corkscrews of white smoke blinking in and out. The spiral tail of a comet. Charred bits of the rat's thigh. A dog gnawing a bone. Earth yields dandelion. yields lemon trees, moisture and nutrients, a flow of hormonal forces. Amorous the greedy seed, amorous the greedy seed, craving, licking, nectar, milk, mucus, rhythmic the ecstasy, carnal, spiritual, leaves and limbs spreading, undulating, leaves and limbs spreading, undulating. On multiple screens, digital images, the body of the tapeworm, folding into itself, undulating, segmenting, blowing kisses along the digestive tract, folding into itself, undulating, segmenting, earth, air, fire, water. An outline shapes itself. Playful the unborn babe in its amniotic sac. Carnal, spiritual. Morning to evening, evening to morning, under the mask, a smell of decay, eyescape, earscape, ruinscape. Your bulbous tongue hangs like a drape over your lip. The pulsating fissures, rapidly zigzagging fire ants etch maps of wrath and anguish across your martyred, blood-packed tongue. End to end across the triumphant 21st century, out of the digital age, through the gaps of your fingers, the mute eyewitness sees, hanging in the sky, the skeleton of a horse. Appear, disappear. Eyescape, earscape, ruinscape. Oh, Maggie, you wrecked my bed and kicked me in the head. The love of logic, the logic of love. I must not jump the gun. A laboratory technician draws a circular mark, passing her hands, measuring, counting, dividing. A laboratory technician numbering the bones, skull, neck, spinal column, yellow the bones laid out like stage props. One for the cat chasing a rat, one for the dog gnawing a bone. The universe contains everything that exists. Biomorphic, geomorphic, polymorphic, earth, air, fire, water. The universe contracts, expands. Every day bears the data. Every day bears the data. Disease, famine, torture, war. It is at dusk when through the gaps of your fingers you see peculiar forms. When an outline shapes itself, appears, disappears. The stump of a tree splits, vertical, horizontal. It is at dusk when through the gaps of your fingers an old woman on horseback appears, disappears. When through the gaps of your fingers the mute eyewitness sees hanging in the sky the skeleton of a horse appear, disappear. Evoking the rhythm of spontaneous changes, dead cells clothe and feed the fly. Evoking the rhythm of spontaneous change. Dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Totem and taboo. Totem and taboo. Work is a binding obligation. Blood in, blood out. Rays of solar light pass through the dome of your skull. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Flashes of solar light illuminate prehistoric forests. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Rays of solar light pass through layers of water. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Rays of solar light pass through a barley plant. A barley plant. Rows of cadavers when every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Beams of solar light penetrate volcanoes, glaciers, deserts. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Rays of solar light spiral into a mushroom cloud. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Beams of solar light break down concrete walls. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Rays of solar light burn through plastic particles. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Flashes of solar light split the sea of plastic particles. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Beams of solar light snake dance into plastic particles. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Beams of solar light break up dwarf storms of plastic particles. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Flashes of solar light spiral through plastic particles. Rows of cadavers. When every dawn each day, dead cells clothe and feed the flies. Rays of solar light pass through volcanic hills. Rays of solar light pass through volcanic hills, illuminate a single blood-stained feather. when every dawn each day dead souls clothe and feed the flies. Out of the scientific explosive realm, the triumphant 21st century. Out of the digital age, every day bears the data. Black letters spell ruinscape. I do have a note after this poem that is not in the book, but I would like to read this note about our ruinscape. Because there are several themes that intersect: biodiversity, movement, competition, interaction, infector, infected, prey, and predator. I think that's food for thought. Anyway, I do not know how much time I have left, Mark, for reading.
You can go on for another 15, 20 minutes.
But I would like to include, a response or sharing discussion with.
Would you like to do some discussion now and then do some more reading?
Yes, I think I would, because this poem concerns what's happening today. I'd like to see if anybody wants to make any comment.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to ask Donna, it'll take a minute, the tech host, to unmute everybody. And once you're unmuted, then...
No, I want to hear other people.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just killing time until Donna unmutes people.
Well,
You're good, Mark. Everyone's been unmuted, so everyone
Okay,
feel free
thanks.
to join the conversation.
Susan,
Thank you, absolutely.
Are you ready now to participate as a group and ask questions or have any response?
Well, I would certainly, the one thing I would like to do first, Rochelle, is just tell us a little bit about how you became an artist in your poetry and your playwriting. I don't think that we know much about that. And
well, I think somebody could look me up after that. They could easily find that. I'm really interested in participatory responses too. They can always look up Rochelle Owens, poet, playwright, and find that.
Sure.
I really want, because as I said, each poem that I write is taking the bull by the horns, and it's not for me only. It is for others to hear. And
yeah, I'd be happy to jump in.
Sure, just go ahead. You don't need to raise your hand to join.
Susan's credentials first. Susan is a geologist, a poet, and a scholar, and is a very informed person.
Well, just to give you a thank you, when I was working on my dissertation at the University of Oklahoma, I was included some work by Rochelle, and my dissertation had to do with the apocalyptic narrative in 20th century literature, film, and cultural narratives. And it turned out it was like the gift that keeps on giving, apocalypse. But one thing that is very interesting about Rochelle's work is, as you can hear, there's definitely an apocalyptic theme. In the ones that she selected, they have to do with things like, about collapse of biomes and diversity, et cetera. And then in this last one, our ruinscape, basically talking about plastics in the ocean, things that we've done to like foul our own nests and essentially bringing around a kind of end of the world. But the thing about Rochelle's work that I find to be quite interesting is she uses a kind of layering and repetition. So you could hear the repetition of the different phrases. So they kind of insinuate themselves so that as they're deconstructing and fragmenting your perception of the world itself, you're also building up something new. And then there's a level of horror in it, of course, but there's also a level of choice, choosing to think about that transformation of rebuilding. So what I really like about Rochelle's work is that it's not just about the process of watching the world fall apart, but it's also the process of creation.
Thank you, Susan. That's
Anyway.
perceptive. Anybody else? Yes, Peter.
It's such a pleasure to hear your poetry, Rochelle, spoken by you after all these years. And I couldn't help, particularly listening to that last poem, think back on this play that was the first play I ever worked on in New York that Margaret Harrington starred in, He Won't She. But the parallels in the language and the sensibility, because that was an apocalyptic play as well. That was about the falling apart of one regime and the birth of another.
Yes.
But as Susan was saying, and it's repetition plays such a big part in this, but how it is that you get sort of gradually through steps, penetrate down to the elemental level. And by doing that, you both get at the way the elemental level has been betrayed by society or by, modern technology or whatever, but also how the elemental level prevails. And in the breakdown of the artificial systems that kind of overwhelm it or bury it, reemerge. And I heard you say that you didn't know much about Rochelle as a playwright, and you can look this up, as Rochelle said, and that was so characteristic of you to say something like that. I have to say, she was a legend in the off-Broadway movement, and it was through her language. It was radical. Your plays were radical. Futz, took the town by storm and upset a few apple carts, but it was always through your language that you brought something, unexperienced into play. Taking the bull by the horns. That's all I'll say, but it's just great to be here and hear you again after all these years.
Thank you, Peter. I wonder if people heard, because I love that line. It's from Rod Stewart. Oh, Maggie, you wrecked my bed and kicked me in the head. We all know Rod Stewart, right?
Yep.
So the singer, I guess he's still around, isn't he? He's still around.
Yeah, he's crooning now.
He's what?
He's doing the crooning songs.
He's crooning now.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, I wanted to make that poem. I had to do something to kick the poem's ass. And I thought that line was very good because it breaks up this serious, strong message of dynamics that oppose each other. Anybody else? Oh, I could read more. I thought.
Oh, Rochelle, can you hear me? It's Margaret.
Oh, good.
Yes, I hear you, but I can't see you.
I don't know where to hit to. Well, it's not necessary to see me because I'm seeing you. And Rochelle, the reading was brilliant, and it hit me right in my heart and in my gut.
Thank you so much.
But to read it is a wonderful intellectual experience. But to hear it as you read it, and your connection to it and your transmission to me as the audience, I'm just so moved by it and bedazzled. And it's just a marvelous experience to be here in the audience, even though we are so remote. But you're right here. I can see you, and it was a wonderful, wonderful reading. And I just am so full of joy at hearing you and seeing you and feeling the connection to your your wonderful, deep and moving poetry and intellectual, the intellectual insights that you bring, and to change how I see things, and to give more depth in what I can see and feel. And in this moment, I thank you so much, my friend, and I'm so bedazzled. And
Margaret, it's so wonderful that you're here. Margaret had the principal role in the same play that Peter Littlefield stage managed. And that's a wonderful, well, I know Margaret for many years, but Peter I haven't seen, who was the stage manager for the play that Margaret appeared in. He wasn't she, and that was so many years ago. And so anybody else have any responses, or else I could read some more poetry?
Read some more.
Okay.
yes.
All right. I'm going to read a lighter poem. A more a poem. I'm trying to think what is a lighter poem. Well, okay. I think that I shall read from, this is interesting because I wrote this, I guess, let me see from what period. Oh, around 1980, it was published in 1986. A book titled W.C. Fields in French Life. Many of you have heard of course, W.C. Fields. Is that right? The actor, W.C. Fields? Oh, people are muted, but they are acknowledging. They heard, okay. I have used W.C. Fields as a persona in this poem to give another shading so that the poem would communicate in a more organic, natural way. It would be juxtaposed with the philosophical aspects of the poem or the various levels. The poem is sort of autobiographical, and so that it talks about the poet, and the poet is me, and perhaps my evolution as a young poet. A fragment, okay, it's called W.C. Fields in French Light. A fragment catalog paste up of the 20th century. A time lapse. A naive father allegory. She says, the scruples of myself should be the scruples of the world. The woman as wrongly treated as the nez-passé Indian. Quest of extremes. I'm enamel-eyed, a ritual slaughterer, hypnotized. Alone, the lonely poet, lonely as a fish, speaks into the darkness in the voice of W.C. Fields. Busy making a device naturally, this is as the custom determines, but as is the custom a thing done as that which was done before you came along, you rotten kid. The photos of starved African young barely stir anyone. The primal Adam says, my surging, my vitality, my own arms round about me and a boat under me. I go roving with my dark love, laying up meat for the holidays. And let your innards turn to piranha fish. Light of the sunny land, ho, ho, ho. My own arms holding the reindeers, voluminous buttocks. I am the St. Nicholas of your nightmares. This is a law for the West. When looking at photos of Iwo Jima, I'm reminded that I want to make you a gift of my bald head, my khaki pants, my soldier eye of blue, préférez-vous? Where would you place my gentleness? I'm a rich man, says W.C. The roads, mountains, skies, and eating rolls on throughways ain't my cup of tea. Light of the sunny land, ho, ho, ho. I must interject. W.C. is also William Carlos Williams, poet, prominent poet, and I juxtapose the W.C. Fields with William Carlos Williams, and also my identity as a woman poet, because particularly when I was writing these poems and continuing up to now, the prince of poetry was a male. W.C. Fields, well, he had a lot of irony and undercut identity, especially with that super actress, Mae West. But anyway, I don't want to digress. Miles up a solitary road, look in my eye as I whisper, as a lonely poet should. Here are some speckled eggs on neutral gray. And as for French Huguenots, who exactly were they? Ho, ho, ho. But I remember the lady's graceful arches. Indeedy I do. They were Gothic style. The snow is blowing over Nez Perce, despair. A heart of flat space, making a twinge of pain. A tale before doubt, scorpions, the wingtips of birds, mutiny, the last gasp. The tramping American revolutionary listens to drenching rain. The image here is in New York of the Coliseum. This building. I don't know whether they destroyed it, but there is some talk about destroying this building in New York, which is near Central Park West, called the Coliseum. And of course, there is the Roman Coliseum, but this image is particularly of the New York City Coliseum. On earth, in the territory of the Coliseum, I see you, and you expel from me my ferocity, my criminal wit, my agility. I spring like a freight car made of silk and bullets. I am the male of your dreams, wearing a paste-on mustache. A Halloween child asking you for candy. An intestine in my body rises in fear as the criminal takes my money. Shock suspends the ventricle. The stem chugs up the stomach. The criminal twitches. The exact quantity of energy for injury and death. Essentially, there is an aspect of the poet having a fear of being mugged. Anybody can have the fear of being mugged. I am longing for revolution, iron bar in my hands. my eyes. Concussion war. I'm rigid with courage, standing in the place where the spleen activates the plot against my death. I'm speaking into darkness. Take my life, he says, but give me a kiss. Release my fear. When my brain, a big worm, stares out. And let me, the American revolutionary, look at it eye to eye and not be afraid to die, like Peter Stuyvesant and George Washington. And remember the Alamo. Preserve mine integrity as my life processes suspend themselves in the mute choice of self-preservation. I fall to the sidewalk. I see the luncheonette fluorescent lights blinking in 3 series. My blood a problem on concrete. The American revolutionary loves the martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. The erotic saint is remembered in Brooklyn. The mutilated American visualizes the internal organs quiet as sculpture. Alone, the lonely poet, lonely as a fish, speaks into the darkness in the voice of W.C. Fields. In the covered wagons of yore, I saw the American revolutionary gazing blindly and eating a bowl of pinto beans. All the categories are open. I believe that, and I'm going to digress. I do believe that in writing poetry, all the categories can be open. Are open, might be, can be. All the categories are open. Remember that, lest you dig your teeth in rage on an old lamb bone. The permanence of millions of gallons of earth. The American revolutionary leaps the abyss. The Sacred Heart is American revolutionary. Razor voice, a concrete icon. Biochemical fervor to make the circle perfect. It's a habit wrought while I talk. Miles up a solitary gravel road, miles up a solitary road, snow covers the gasoline pump. The year is dated earth substance. Outside of this sound, my voice, I'm not interested in a totally professional presentation. I sing with the troubadours and gasp at the unseen. I smile at the theme to link American revolutionary to everything. Next fall, I'll fall for a business opportunity. Black oil into the system, the conversion of water, survival technique, kicking my legs out. I am alive whistling a tune. I want to be a living woman, see a tiny caterpillar waving in the light. As I whisper as a lonely poet should. Here are some speckled eggs on neutral gray. Look in my eye. Words and blood animate. Fly paper and summer bungalows of 50 years ago. The American revolutionary assaults courtly literature, abstracts it. The assault on courtliness is as follows. The American revolutionary, written in the form of a collective, of a mass, no. The American revolutionary, written in the form of a collective or a mass biography. It's a study of an individual in conflict with society. The heroine of the story emerges first as a bizarre figure whose goal is to transform herself into a poet, so that by asserting her courtliness, she can win a place in society. By the end of the tale, she stands as a quixotic individual, pathetically positive to the insistent mendacity and grossness of a world which subverts courtliness. I'm going to repeat that because I think it's some sort of clue. By the end of the tale, she stands as a quixotic individual, pathetically positive to the insistent mendacity and grossness of a world which subverts courtliness. Section 3. The American revolutionary is your brother-in-law wearing better leather clothes than you. You appear to others bug-eyed in surprise. Whole decades pass as bewildered you deposit messy, anxious dreams around the house, mortgaged to the hilt. Ixion new rubber hoses, or whatever in soft tones and explosive. The birth of envy of your brother-in-law, wearing colored, incomprehensible Shrove Tuesday Italian silk socks. The birth of envy of your brother-in-law, wearing colored, incomprehensible Shrove Tuesday Italian silk socks. God pity you. I am bewildered around the ascent of woman, the thinker's wisdom, core of the atom, your own cells, the wind at my forehead. Alone, the lonely poet, lonely as a fish, speaks into the darkness in the voice of W.C. Fields. Today, in the post office, the American revolutionary received the letter bomb from Jerusalem. Who will open letter bombs today? Who will stop asking questions? Stop the demands of why and who, and open the letter bomb yourself. And who will watch you from 20 feet away while your fingertips and nose fly to the moon? In the 18th century, the bar rooms of the Western pioneer towns stood for, a different map of the world, unlike anything you saw. My grandfather charting the connection to the New World. I will skip to the end because the poem is quite long, and I think that I would like to end this section of the poem with the last part, the last section. Boy, it is a very long poem. Okay. The very first time I visited Paris was in 1969. And I saw the Cathedral of Sacré-Cœur. And I was struck with its architectural forms. And there was this light, because they light up the Cathedral of Sacré-Cœur. So this poem ends with going up the steps. I did not go up the steps, but I could see it in the evening. I advanced step by step up the hill to Sacré-Cœur, up the hill to Sacré-Cœur, wearing ceramic earrings with tiny pictures of the Bahamas and West Indies, islands that can drive you insane. The austere sun burlesques my gold dress. I am light and heat. At the vestibule of Sacré-Cœur, silence. I squint my eyes, sharpening the forms of vast light. I think of the history of siphon gas, soft walls within relief. I hurl the javelin to the top. Now I'm going to read a poem, and I will end the poem because the poem is a life poem. And it was written in Oklahoma, and it was about a tea serving set, basically, that the English department had inherited from a former chairman of the department. And my late husband, George, became the chairman of the Department of English in 1984. And for some reason, I wanted to write this poem. And it's rather accessible. Ode to a Tea Serving Set, 1924 to 1955. That was the chairman at that time. Well, I believe he was. Well, for some reason, the date says 1924 to 1955. They don't give teas anymore. The last tea was given about, this was about the English department. They did not give teas when we went to Oklahoma. They don't give teas anymore. The last tea was given about 15 years ago. It might as well have been 50. The teas just simply stopped like my grandfather's clock. When was the last tea given? I said, softly swinging a wine cup of plastic between 3 fingers. When was the last tea given? I said, softly swinging a wine cup of plastic between 3 fingers. 15 years ago, the last tea was given 15 years ago in 1968. They don't give teas anymore. 15 years ago, it might as well have been 50. The Rococo style tea serving set is owned by the Department of English and entrusted to he who is the chair. But it's the chair's spouse who's obliged to deal with it. Deal with a tea serving set, I said. It can be a burden, you know. Yes, I said. It tarnishes before your very eyes to a purplish black when it is exposed to air. The last chairman's spouse had housed the tea serving set in a glass cabinet. And on a scale of 1 to 10, it gleamed an 8. It was wonderfully displayed. It never tarnished. And she never gave a tea. They don't give teas anymore. It was a civilized person who decided that the words, quote, in memoriam, Ernest Carson Ross, 1924 to 1955. Yes, that was the date of that chairman of the English department. Birth and death, yes. In memoriam, Ernest Carson Ross, 1924 to 1955. Be engraved on 2 majestic silver platters, and the custom of tea drinking with its own etiquette and special equipment would endure. And objects of silver adorning the tea table would proclaim the status of the English department forever and forever. Perhaps it was the dead professor's wife or daughter who felt the silver forms clatter about in her head. To sip tea and munch buttered scones among style-conscious elite academicians with spouses, with wives. How restful. But they don't give teas anymore. It was a civilized person who decided that the words, quote, in memoriam, Ernest Carson Ross, 1924, 1955, unquote, be engraved on 2 majestic silver platters. Platters that, in the opinion of some, were more suitable to hold a buffalo head. This was the state of Oklahoma, and remember, the buffalo were once a very beautiful, massive sight coursing across the plains of the Southwest in Oklahoma. Thank you so much. If anybody wants to comment or cheer or hiss or boo or whatever.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
People would have to, I think we're gonna, we're getting unmuted now, so I'll start off by saying thank you very much, Rochelle.
Thank you. Yes, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you all for being such wonderful listeners.
You're a great poet. You're a great poet.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you.
Excellent.